don't you ever forget what God has done for you.
Yes.
Because still there is infinite possibility
Yes.
that resides right within you right now.
Yes.
Right now.
Yes. Yes.
Thank you very much, choir. I'm Reverend Rick. For those of you who are visiting this morning, I'm honored to be one of your staff ministers, and I'm glad to be here this morning. The spiritual principle I am dealing with today is this. The one that started this good work in you will complete the work. It's a good work, by the way. And it's a good work, and this work starts at the point that Spirit incarnates as you. Have you ever thought about that? Spirit incarnates itself as each one of us. Sue Monk Kidd writes the book, When the Heart Waits. And the story that she's talking about is about the soul's evolution. Remember, the soul is the mind, the will, and the emotions of the individual. It's what makes us an individual. It is the individual nature of the one in us. So who here doesn't mind waiting? A little bit more honest than the 9 a.m. What about when you're waiting for something to happen? What about when you're in a dark place? When you think the Spirit is silent? Waiting for things to change, or maybe just wanting to feel different. Waiting in the place called nowhere. Now tell me now who likes to wait. What about waiting in line? Waiting at a traffic light? Waiting for the bicyclers and the walkers to pass? And if nothing else, TSA and security. Do you want to wait? See, over time I've become better at the idea of waiting. I was actually one of those impatient drivers. I'm sure you never would think that, but I was one of those impatient drivers. And to break myself of the cycle of being so irritated and always in such a hurry, I had to put tape over the clock in the car. So I didn't know what time it was. My parents said I also put the tape over the speedometer, so I had no idea how fast I was going either. I'm not going to confess. Okay. So I've been impatient in my life, and it gets better over time. In our belief system, though, should we have to wait? Can we use the law? Yes. That's the answer, by the way. Can we use the creative process? Yes. Can we speak a word and change the situation? Yes. Can we control everything that happens to us? Just don't. No. You're one step ahead of me. I was going to say you could actually abstain from that answer. But here's the issue. Can you speak a word and take control over your response to the situation? But are we supposed to wait? Or are we supposed to just speak a word and overcome? Spiritual waiting. See, spiritual waiting is the difference between making something happen and allowing something to happen. It's about our soul's transformation. Because I don't think we can make the soul transformation happen. It has to happen. We have to let it happen. And the one that started this work in you will complete the work that was started. So let me give you the answer to whether or not we should wait. Wait for it. If you pray and things don't change, wait. Isn't that profound? I think that's just really profound. Because here's the deal. What other option do you have? But how you wait, right? It's how you wait that makes a difference. See, waiting is not an idle experience. It's time to reflect. It's time to consider what Spirit is saying. It's careful to retain your relationships during this time, though, because everybody's not going through that experience with you as you are spiritually, but you are dragging them with you. And it's an awful time when you're going through this kind of transformation, because when people ask you what's wrong, you're not sure exactly what to tell them. It's a challenging time, and it can make people around us actually quite mad. Remember, we've trained them to interact with us, and now we have decided to change. And the thing is people just wanted to go back to where it was. And in spiritual transformation, you can't go back. Because the one that started this work in you is the one that is going to complete it. Sometimes you'll just think you're crazy. Sometimes you'll just want to run away from home. Now, I had my own transformational experience. Actually, I've had a few. But my biggest one was the decision to leave Florida. I grew up in Michigan and spent my whole life wanting to move to Florida or California. Florida was closer. So I get to Florida, and after I had been there 18 years, I felt this rustling in me that it was time to go. Now, for 2 years, I traveled every other month to some place in the United States on an interview. Now, why I did it every other month is I didn't want my job to recognize the fact that I was interviewing. But I also didn't want my family to know either. I just let them believe I was just traveling for work. Now think about it. I wondered often during this time if I was just losing it. I left the sunshine and the beach of Florida for the rain of Oregon. And guess what? When I got to Oregon, my transformational experience didn't end. It took 5 more years and 3 moves for me to get clear and intentional about what was happening. And I end up here. So what are we to do, and how are we to handle waiting? See, waiting at this particular time is about spiritual development. And here's the deal. This is when the transformation occurs. And how you go through this is how you go through this. Sue Monk Kidd says, and when the heart waits, she says, this is a spiritual development situation, and it's when the heart waits. But she described this entire experience as fertile emptiness. Right in the middle of our emptiness, there is life. Because the one that started this work in you will complete it. There is life and infinite possibilities right there. The book is an autobiography about a very dark time in her life. And she said, I was just spiritually wandering, but I found grace in the end, but it was a difficult time. I call it the dark night of the soul. Now, the dark night of the soul is a poem by St. John of the Cross written in 1600. He was a Spanish monk. But there is a particular understanding to this poem. It talks about his awareness of his oneness with God. It is a mystical understanding of oneness. See, it can be easy, and particularly in our conflicts right now in the world, where we'll say, no, we are all one. All those people and me are one. But in the spiritual transformation, you have to recognize that you are in the one. It's unavoidable. Dark night of the soul. But you become aware of oneness as a function of this transformation. So don't be bothered by the word mystical. It's not woo-woo. It's just the truth. Ernest Holmes puts it this way. He said it's intuition. The inner awareness of the direct experience of God. It is how we understand that the one becomes many and many become the one. There is only one, and only one life. Have you understood that there's only one life? Then you are a mystic. A mystic is aware of the oneness. Spiritual transformation has 3 stages: separation, transformation, and emergence. The butterfly is used as a metaphor for the soul, and this is true almost on every continent historically. But the butterfly is always used to illustrate transformation and the soul's transformation, because everything that there needs to be a butterfly is resident in the caterpillar. It spins its own cocoon from its self. It translates itself into this cocoon. There is a metamorphosis, and the butterfly comes out. It is a very transcendent experience. And Sue Monk Kidd uses this metaphor to explain the waiting that we go through in transformation. A metamorphosis. We don't become something else that we're not. It's already in us because the work started at our incarnation. See, there is no McFaith. There is no fast food faith development here. There is none. You know, it's not fast food. It's not cooked in the microwave either. It's cooked in the slow cooker. And sometimes in the pressure cooker. I've been in the pressure cooker more times than I care to think about it. It's just not instant. But as we learn to yield and trust the one that is within us all, it becomes easier. You know, it's really dangerous to understand that there is infinite possibilities within each one of us. It's dangerous, because guess what? You don't know what's going to happen. And as you yield to that, you may be surprised at what might happen. She said, Sue Monk Kidd said she was just tired of what everyone expected her to be. She was Sandy's wife, her children's mother, she was some patient's nurse, but she was becoming something else. So she saw this cocoon, and it represented to her what she thought was happening to her. The cocoon looked like an upside down question mark. And she said that's where her life was. It was silent, in a dark place, and it seemed like her entire life was upside down. So, Sue Monk Kidd said, her husband said, would you just snap out of it? You know? Now, I was in Florida, and during this process of my transition, I wouldn't suggest that you do this, but I did. I decided that I was going to have these parameters and conditions that were going to indicate for me that it was time to move. So I had this laundry list of what had to happen. You know, somebody had to pack my house, they had to move me, I got a sign-on bonus, they had to fly the dog, you know, everything that had to necessarily happen. The interesting thing about it is, I didn't understand at the time that I was handling it as an intention. Everything that I had on the list came about. And I thought, I've got to move to Oregon. But as Spirit would have a sense of humor, they offered to pay the taxes too. I had no question in my mind that it was time to go. Oh, but was it an interesting transition? It's the separation that makes the difference. Because here's what happens in the process of separation. We feel that we are unfulfilled. Now, the interesting thing about being unfulfilled is probably there's nothing in your life that you can put your finger on and say is wrong. You just don't feel that you are being fulfilled. And you can't tell people about this, because if you tell your job, I don't feel fulfilled, they'll say, well, why don't you go get another job? And if you tell your spouse or your partner, I don't feel fulfilled, the message that they get is, you are not making me happy. So this is the kind of thing you just may not necessarily tell anybody, but when you feel that you are not being fulfilled, separation has started. Separation, transformation. The classic line for transformation is, be ye transformed by the renewing of your mind. And you know that happens in our minds, but most of the time, again, I kind of understand it after it actually happens. The transformation happens when you finally let go. And I wish I could tell you that it happens in one instant, at one time, but here's the deal. It happened to me over a period of time. And I did my best trying to take control over what my transformation would be. By the way, let me just give you the answer now. It doesn't work. See, you just want to feel better. So you think half the time if I just could go back. But it's not possible to go back because you've already had the question of being unfulfilled. Separation has started, and now you are at the point of transformation. You are at the point of no return now. The Gospel of Thomas teaches us, it says, what is in us will save us if we bring it forth. If we bring it forth. Sue Monk Kidd put it this way. Nothing that had been important was still important, and everything that previously hadn't been important was now important. She said, I'm in the spiritual waiting room, waiting for something to happen. She speaks of herself, she said, I was a pleaser, I was a perfectionist, and a performer. She said, sometimes I just wanted to run away from home. If you are not with your spouse, have you ever thought about running away from home? I have, and I've just told it on a video. So I may have to call you and come stay with you next week. But sometimes you just want to run away from home, and it doesn't have anything to do with anybody else, it's just this fact that you feel unfulfilled. She said, I was always someone's mother, someone's teacher, someone's nurse, but who am I? That's how you know you're in transition. You ask the question of yourself, who am I? And it isn't an easy answer. Because every description that you can use to say I am is a limitation. I am a teacher. I am a husband. I am a wife. I'm an administrator. Every one of those descriptions is a limitation. And you are asking yourself who you are, and it's at the point of time that this infinite possibility is kind of roaring within you, and you're not really sure how to answer the question. The butterfly makes this transition, not because it is instructed to by anyone. It knows itself when it is time to change. And our souls know when it is time to change. So Sue Monk Kidd goes to a retreat, and they tell the participants to make a paper doll that represents where you're going, you know, how you see yourself in the future. And she says, but they didn't give us scissors, they said just tear away at the edges until you get the form of the paper doll that you're looking for. When it was over, Sue Monk Kidd actually gathered up, she wanted to gather up the fragments that she had torn away from the paper. The instructor said, you don't throw out the fragments. It's your past. You don't throw it out, you integrate that into your wholeness. And that spoke to her that she could still be the wife and the nurse and the mother, even though she was learning what she was becoming. Don't ever refuse the scraps in your life. You know, this is a time of big questions with few answers. Life is kind of a bit of a mystery at this time. But the one that started this work in you shall complete it. See, this is what ticks me off when I'm going through transformation. Why do people think they're supposed to ask you, but I thought you were going to? You said you were going to. Why do you need to remind me about what I said? I don't need you to remind me about what I said. And here's the one that really pushes me over the edge. Why would you want to do that? There is a very simple answer. Because I want to. It has nothing to do with you. It has to do with me. But changing makes people around you uncomfortable. And they will do their best to pull you back into the situation where there is comfort. You can't do it. You try it if you want to. But here's the issue. Why can't I change my mind? You don't need to remind me of what my decisions were. I know what they are. I wrestled with them all by myself. I don't need you to remind me. But people think they need to. I get it. But I tell you, sometimes you will look at your own experience in your own life and you'll go, I think I am losing my mind. Why am I in this place? But I am in a place of no return. See, this is the time when you embrace your uniqueness. The fact that you are an individual and beautifully and wonderfully made. You don't know the language yet that you're whole, perfect, and complete, but you start to recognize, I am what I am, and that's all I am. And whatever that is, that's just going to have to be good enough.
Yeah.
But you have to continue the process. Separation, transformation, emergence. Now, Sue Monk Kidd's experience was this. She was a nurse and actually a college professor. And she wanted to write. And that's when people ask you the questions, why would you want to do that? I thought you wanted to be a nurse when you were a kid. Why can't you change your mind? She describes the fact that it was time for her to leave her false self. Now, I am not an ego basher. I get ego. It is what we use in our life to keep ourselves safe. But what you do have to let go of is the lies you tell yourself. I'm happy, I'm satisfied, everything is just fine. You cannot lie to yourself and emerge. If you do, you will just stay there. It's a personal awareness of this oneness, and it will give you power to get through the experience, how to fit as you go forward. Others will probably know the difference before you do, by the way, because you're just doing your thing. And in the process of emergence, you start to experience delight and peace. And what you get around you is, you have changed. Yeah, I have. Now, fortunately, if we allow Spirit in the situation, Spirit works on them just like it works on us. It's just not my individual experience. Spirit has to necessarily work on everything that's going on around me. And their discomfort is a part of Spirit working on them. Sue Monk Kidd became an author. Many of you may know her from the movie The Secret Life of Bees. She wrote The Secret Life of Bees. In fact, she has written 8 books. She gave up nursing. All she does is lecture. That's who she was becoming. 8 books later, and a movie, she has emerged. And she says, and now I'm a feminist. And Sandy and I are still together. So for me, it took me 5 years. It took me prac school, school of ministry, here, for this transformation to occur for me. I read this book when I started, and now I feel finally that I have emerged from that experience. Ernest Holmes says, being in the center of the divine mind, therefore I am compelled to do the right thing at the right time. And this is true for all of us if we learn how to cooperate with the experience and trust that even though we are in silence and even though it feels like if we are in pain and waiting, the one that started this work in you will complete it. So should you wait? I would say the answer is yes. You should wait for this transformation. But the one thing that you must do when you are going through any experience is you have to push through it. You have to pray until something happens. Praying until something happens will carry you through the experience, particularly once you start feeling unfulfilled. Now, many people this morning told me, have I been reading their email? And one thing I have learned about yielding your life to this experience, I think Reverend Georgia would agree with me. What's for me, and I get out of this, also you get something out of it too. And what Spirit speaks to you, by the way, half the time is not something I said. It's something that just happens within all of us, because the one that is within you
Yes.
will complete
Yes.
the task.
Yes.
But you must pray until something happens.
Yes.
And so it is.
Yes.